I should start by admitting something a little embarrassing for a man of my age and net worth. I've been kissed far less often than people assume, especially in elevators. Actually, until that morning, the number stood firmly at 0. And then fate, or a questionable maintenance crew, decided to spice up my life by stopping the elevator between the 20th and 21st floor, locking me in with a woman who looked like every romantic regret a man can have after 60. I wasn't planning for any of that. I only wanted a quiet morning, a cup of bitter coffee, and maybe a reason not to hate the taste of my own money for one day. Instead, I ended up kissing a stranger among blinking emergency lights, stale ventilation, and my own heartbeat making a dramatic attempt to escape through my ribs. She started it. Let the record reflect that. Or at least let it reflect that I didn't have time to think before it happened. But that's skipping ahead. Proper stories should begin with context, even if my lawyer insists I should stop giving context in general. I had been feeling worn down for months. Maybe years. The kind of tired where even luxury stops tasting like luxury. My life had turned into a glossy magazine spread, expensive, clean, and as emotionally nutritious as laminated paper. A man shouldn't be able to walk through his own mansion and forget whether he's already had breakfast. A man shouldn't be so bored that he agrees to attend board meetings just to feel something other than his knees popping. Yet there I was, heading to a Christmas charity brunch in Midtown, wearing a suit that probably cost more than a mid-sized car, grumbling to myself about the lukewarm fate of humanity when the elevator jolted, groaned, and died. There were 2 of us inside. Her. And me, the man who had once owned a yacht named Serenity but was currently closer to cardiac arrest than serenity. At first, we did what all decent strangers do, avoided eye contact while pretending this was totally normal. Then she laughed, a quick, bright sound that cracked through the stale air like a match. "Well," she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear with a kind of elegance that made me forget English for a second. "Either we're stuck, or the world's ending. But honestly, this building has worse wiring than my first apartment, so I'm voting for stuck." "Stuck, seems likely," I replied, trying to look calm and not like a man who gets nervous around attractive humans. She wasn't classically beautiful in the airbrushed way magazines pretend people look. She was something better. Dark hair in soft waves. Eyes like she carried her own holiday lights inside them. And a smile that didn't ask for permission before it climbed into my chest and rearranged my heartbeat. The emergency speaker crackled. A bored-sounding voice informed us help would arrive, when possible, which I knew was corporate language for, "Don't die, thanks." We talked to pass the time. I told her my name was Henry, leaving out Wallace, since that tends to make people sit straighter and pretend they don't Google net worth lists in bed. She told me her name was Lily, though she didn't give a last name either, so we were even. She worked in design, she said. Interiors, mostly. Loved Christmas, hated peppermint, adored movies that made her cry but refused to admit it. She talked like her thoughts danced instead of marched, and I found myself answering questions I didn't remember agreeing to. "Do you ever feel like you've lived so much life that the rest of it is just leftovers?" she asked at one point. I nearly choked. "Every morning before breakfast." She grinned. "Thought so." The conversation slowed. The elevator hummed uselessly around us. And then she sighed, the soft, tired kind of sigh that carried too much truth for someone her age. "I really need this day to go well," she murmured. "Bad week." I asked. "Bad month," she corrected. "But it might turn around. I'm meeting someone important later." "A business partner?" "No. Family. Kind of. It's complicated. Everything interesting is." Her phone battery died shortly after that. Mine had already given up on society 2 floors ago. Time stretched into something strange, something intimate. And that's when the lights flickered. She squeezed her eyes shut. "I swear, if this thing drops, I'm haunting the building." "I'll join you," I said. "I feel like I'd make a decent ghost. Lots of floating. Dramatic entrances." She laughed again, louder this time, and then she looked at me, properly looked, as if searching for something in the lines on my face. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Certainly. My dignity is already gone." "Do you believe in lucky gestures?" I blinked. "Lucky gestures? Like kissing someone before a big moment. For good fortune. Positive energy. Karma. Whatever you want to call it." "That's a tradition?" "It's my tradition," she said, placing one hand on her hip, utterly unbothered by the absurdity. "One kiss. Nothing scandalous. Nothing dramatic. Just I could use some." I should have said no. I absolutely should have said something dignified and mature and appropriate for a father whose son was also somewhere in Manhattan, probably doing something normal, like choosing wine or ruining his life in a less cinematic way. But she was smiling. And her eyes were warm. And my heart, traitorous, sentimental organ, whispered yes before my mouth could disagree. She stepped closer. The space between us shrank until my pulse had nowhere left to hide. Her hand brushed my cheek lightly, as if testing whether I was real. Then she kissed me. It wasn't long. It wasn't heated. It wasn't the stuff of illicit fantasy. It was soft, light, impossibly gentle. But it hit every lonely corner inside me like a spark finding dry wood. She pulled back first, cheeks flushed, eyes bright with embarrassment and something else I didn't have the courage to name. "Well," she whispered, "that should be enough luck for the whole week." The elevator jolted back to life so suddenly she nearly fell against me. The doors slid open as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't just lived an entire emotional renaissance in a metal box. We walked out together, but at the lobby she hesitated. "This was strange," she said. "Extremely. And kind of wonderful. Also extremely." A small smile tugged at her lips. "Goodbye, Henry." I nearly gave her my number. Nearly asked for hers. Nearly broke the elegant, fragile perfection of that encounter. But she turned away before I managed to decide. She stepped into a black car waiting outside. I stepped into a city suddenly brighter than it had been that morning. And I truly believed that was the last I'd ever see of her. It wasn't. Not even close. That night, I drove to my estate in Connecticut for the annual family Christmas gathering. A Wallace family tradition. Loud, expensive, and full of people who loved me in legally complicated ways. My son Aaron had called earlier, saying he was bringing his fiancée this year. He sounded excited. Nervous. A little breathless, which I assumed meant she was beautiful enough to scramble his vocabulary. The house glowed with warm lights when I arrived. Snow drifted lazily across the driveway, the good cinematic kind, the kind no storm in real life ever manages. I walked inside, shedding my coat, preparing myself for the usual chaos. And then I heard Aaron's voice. "Dad. She's here, come meet her." I turned. He stood by the fireplace, tall and handsome in that effortless way young people seem to do without trying. And beside him, Lily. Her eyes widened. Mine probably did too. Every molecule in the room gasped. Aaron beamed, oblivious to the silent implosion occurring 3 feet away. "Dad, this is my fiancée, Lily Hart. Lily, this is my father, Henry Wallace." She opened her mouth. Closed it. Opened it again. I prayed she wouldn't say, "Nice elevator," and she didn't, but I saw the panic in her eyes as clearly as my own reflection in them. "Mr. Wallace," she managed, extending her hand with admirable composure. "I've heard so much about you." "Lily," I said carefully, taking her hand. "A pleasure." Her hand was warm. Too warm. I let go quickly before my treacherous pulse leaked the truth. Aaron wrapped an arm around her waist, radiant. "Isn't she incredible?" "Unquestionably," I said. They both seemed satisfied with that answer, though Lily shot me a look that translated roughly to, "If you say one word about that elevator, I will leap into the nearest snowdrift and vanish from society." I nodded to show that her secret was safe. My secret too. But secrets, much like Christmas lights, have a habit of tangling themselves the moment you look away. For the rest of the evening I watched them. Not in a jealous way, at least not the ugly kind. More like a man trying to understand the rules of a game he didn't realize he'd been playing. She was relaxed around him. Happy even. They looked good together. And yet every time our eyes met, some ghost of that elevator moment flickered between us, too subtle to name but impossible to ignore. At one point she excused herself to the kitchen and fate, apparently addicted to tormenting me, pushed me to follow. She was standing near the window, snow glow lighting her face. "We need to talk," she whispered. I suspected. "That kiss was your tradition," I said softly. "Nothing more." Her relief was palpable, but behind it was something heavier. Guilt maybe, or confusion, or both. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I had no idea you were and I had no idea you were my son's fiancée." Her throat bobbed. "This is a disaster. Only if we make it one. We have to pretend it never happened." "Agreed." She let out a shaky breath. But I could see it. The memory still flickered in her eyes, the same way it did in mine. "Henry," she whispered, looking away, "please, don't make this harder." "I wouldn't dare." She stepped past me, rejoining the others. I watched her go, feeling the weight of something I couldn't yet name settle deep inside my chest. I had kissed my son's fiancée. And worse, much worse. I wasn't sure I regretted it. Even the snow outside seemed to hold its breath, as if waiting for the first domino to fall. And that was only the beginning of the most chaotic Christmas of my life. If you've never spent Christmas weekend trapped in a mansion with a secret that could shatter your family like a cheap snow globe, I envy you. Truly. There's a special kind of existential sweating that comes from standing in your own living room surrounded by cheerful relatives while desperately trying not to look at the woman you accidentally kissed in a malfunctioning elevator. Morning came far too soon. The house woke early, clattering, laughing, stomping footsteps, someone's playlist blasting Dean Martin like a threat. I, meanwhile, woke with the distinct sensation that the universe was snickering at me. I dressed slowly, hoping I could gather enough dignity to face the day. Spoiler. I couldn't. Dignity had left the building. When I finally made it downstairs, the kitchen was already alive. People chopping, whisking, burning things, arguing about who had the right to season the eggs. And right in the middle of this beautiful breakfast war stood Lily, her back to me, hair falling down her shoulders, sleeves rolled up, laughing at something my sister-in-law had said. For a moment I simply watched her. Not in a creepy way, I wasn't lurking behind a fern, breathing heavily. Just observing. Trying to understand how I had stepped into this absurd tangle of fate without tripping over something obvious, like my own brain. She turned and saw me. Her smile faltered for half a second, just long enough for my stomach to replay that elevator moment with unnecessary enthusiasm. Then she snapped back into the role of son's fiancée, a role she played with a grace that would put trained diplomats to shame. "Good morning, Mr. Wallace," she said, cheerful in a way that made me suspicious she was forcing it. "Henry," I corrected gently. "Please. Otherwise I feel like you're about to sell me insurance." She laughed. A real one this time. Soft, unguarded. Dangerous. Aaron appeared beside her and kissed her cheek with the ease of a man who'd never had to wonder whether someone else had kissed her first, 48 hours ago, in a situation involving emergency lights and questionable wiring. I tried not to choke on my coffee. "Dad," Aaron said, "you okay? You look tense." "I'm 62, I replied. "Existing is tense." He laughed. Lily didn't. Her eyes were on me, too quick, too knowing. I looked away before my son noticed the silent meltdown happening between us. Breakfast dragged on. Conversations swirled. My nieces argued about gingerbread architecture. My sister complained about the thermostat. Aaron told some long story about acquiring a Christmas tree so tall it required 2 employees, 1 chainsaw, and an argument with local fire regulation. And through it all, Lily and I pretended to be strangers. Pretending, it turns out, is exhausting. At some point I escaped to the back terrace under the pretense of checking the outdoor heaters. Really, I needed air. And distance. And maybe a brief, private breakdown. Snow blanketed the yard in soft folds. The sky was a pale winter blue that looked cold even from the warmth of the terrace. I leaned against the railing and let the silence settle around me. For maybe 30 seconds, I believed I was alone. Then the door slid open behind me. "Henry!" Her voice. Quiet, careful, like she was approaching a wounded animal. I didn't turn. "You shouldn't be out here," I said. "People will talk." No one's paying attention. They're arguing about pancakes versus waffles. The family civil war. She stepped closer. Not close enough to touch me, just close enough that I could feel her presence warming the air. "We need to recalibrate," she said softly. "Last night was a shock. Today we should establish some ground rules." "Ground rules," I repeated. "Do they involve pretending we've never met, or pretending we met but the elevator was a hallucination brought on by low oxygen?" A breathy laugh escaped her. Then she pressed her lips together, seriousness returning. I don't know what to call that moment. I don't even know why we. "You asked for luck," I said gently. "And I'm a firm believer in supporting people's holiday superstitions." That's not what it felt like. I finally looked at her. She looked away immediately. The silence that followed was the worst kind. "Heavy, right, sure." "Lily," I said, "you love my son?" Her eyes lifted, not confidently, not steadily, but with an honesty that hurt more than any lie could. "Yes," she whispered. "I do. And he's good for me. He's stable. Just he's safe. The way a beige sweater is safe. The way oat milk is safe. No one falls passionately in love with safe, but but people build lives with it. And you two are happy? I asked. She hesitated. I didn't breathe. Finally, she nodded. We will be. That tiny shift in verb tense, will be, felt like someone nudging a domino at the wrong angle. But whatever happened between us, she continued, voice barely a thread, we can't let it affect anything. Not Aaron. Not the family. Not Christmas. I almost laughed. Bitterly. But I held it back. Of course, I said. We agree completely. Her shoulders relaxed. Just a fraction. Then, like fate was personally invested in making my life cinematic, the terrace door slammed open, and my mother's voice echoed. Henry. Lily. There you are. What are you two whispering about like teenagers? I nearly catapulted myself off the railing. Lily froze, guilty in a way that could have been comedic if the stakes weren't my entire life imploding. My mother squinted at us, suspicion flickering. You know, she said thoughtfully, I once caught Henry here sneaking out to kiss a girl behind the boathouse when he was 17. That's the same expression. Mother please. Lily erupted into a loud, too long laugh. We were discussing pine trees. The shape of pine trees. My mother blinked. Goodness. I knew interior design people were eccentric, but that's impressive. Thank you, Lily said, her smile so stiff I could practically hear the muscles screaming. My mother finally wandered off, humming something painfully jolly. Lily exhaled in relief, then shot me a look that said, if we survive this Christmas, I'm writing a self-help book. She went back inside before I could speak. I spent the next 10 minutes contemplating whether throwing myself into a snowbank would count as an acceptable exit strategy. The rest of the day ran like a fever dream. I tried to keep my distance. She tried too. But life in a house full of people has a way of pushing bodies together, of shrinking the space between coincidences until they feel intentional. For example, decorating the Christmas tree. Every year, my family insists on using sentimental ornaments, most of them hideous but full of memories. Naturally, someone forced me into the tradition, and naturally, Lily and I ended up on opposite sides of the giant spruce. Or so we tried. Fate thought that was adorable. While reaching to hang an ornament shaped like a lopsided snowman with a vendetta, I lost my balance. It wasn't much, a slight shift, a stumble no one with functioning knees should have made. But I did. Lily, on the other side of the tree, reached for the same branch I was aiming for. Our hands met through the needles. So familiar. We jerked apart like teenagers caught doing something scandalous. Aaron laughed behind us. Dad, careful. I can't have you injuring yourself 3 days before our engagement photos. Engagement photos. The phrase landed in my chest like a brick. Lily must have felt the spike of panic that shot through me, because her eyes immediately dropped to the floor. Sorry, she said quickly. Clumsy. I wanted to say it wasn't her fault. That trees were hazardous creatures. That the very laws of physics were sabotaging us. Instead I placed the ornament quietly and stepped back, forcing distance into existence. But the universe wasn't done. During dinner, the seating arrangement, random, my mother swore, placed Lily directly beside me and Aaron across the table. Her perfume drifted toward me every time she moved. Our elbows nearly brushed with every course. She caught my eye once when no one was looking, and something in her expression whispered the same frantic thought pulsing in my mind. This is impossible. Then came the moment that nearly ended me. Dessert. Christmas pudding. My mother's recipe, which could kill a person if dropped from a height. People were talking, joking, drinking. And then, without warning, Aaron raised his glass. I want to make a toast, he said. To Lily, my future wife. The woman who saved me from myself. The woman I can't wait to spend all my Christmases with. Everyone cheered. Lily smiled. I shattered. Not visibly. Outwardly, I raised my glass, smiled warmly, even said, here, here. But inside, something raw split open, something I didn't know had been sleeping in me until she kissed me in that stupid elevator. Later, after desserts and coffee and a disastrous attempt by my brother to dance to holiday music, the guests drifted off to their rooms. I fled to my library, the quietest room in the house, a sanctuary of leather and dust and memories. I expected silence. Instead, after a few minutes, someone knocked softly. She stepped inside before I answered, closing the door behind her. The fire cast gold across her face. I shouldn't be here, she whispered. I know. We agreed to pretend. We did. And we are pretending. Yes. She swallowed. So why does it hurt? The question erased every defense I tried to build. I didn't step closer. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I stayed where I was, hands gripping the back of a chair like it was the only thing anchoring me to sanity. Because, I said quietly, sometimes the wrong moment feels more right than anything should. She closed her eyes. I watched her breathe, slow, shaky, fighting something I understood too well. You're a good man, Henry. Some days, I murmured, I might believe you. She looked up at me then, and something passed through that gaze, soft, lost, dangerous. If things were different, she began softly. Don't, I said. Please. Silence stretched, heavy enough to bend the air. She nodded once, painfully. Then she turned to leave, but hesitated with her hand on the doorknob. Henry. Yes. I keep thinking about that elevator. So do I. The admission pulled a tremor through her shoulders. We'll get through this, she whispered. She didn't sound like she believed it. Neither did I. She slipped out, closing the door gently behind her. The fire crackled. Snow fell outside. And in the quiet of that old room, I realized something devastating. I was falling in love with Lily Hart, my son's fiancée. And Christmas had only just begun. I kept telling myself I'd sleep after that last glass of brandy, but the night had its own opinion. Somewhere between 2 and 3 in the morning, a thunderous crash echoed through the house, followed by a shout that sounded exactly like a fox discovering electricity for the first time. I threw on a robe and hurried downstairs, already preparing myself for the possibility that my son had mistaken a Christmas tree for an intruder again. It wouldn't be the first time. Instead, I found Jonathan standing in the great hall, barefoot, hair sticking up in 6 scientific directions, pointing at the fireplace with the enthusiasm of a man certain he'd just found a doorway to Narnia. Dad, he gasped, look. The mantel, carved walnut, 19th century, one of my few aesthetic indulgences, was scorched. It just burst, he said. Like the ghost of Christmas propane. It's an old estate, I muttered, kneeling to check the stone. Stuff makes noises. Sometimes it coughs a little. It exploded. That's called character. Jonathan narrowed his eyes. You're not taking this seriously. I was taking it very seriously. Because behind the chimney screen, tucked under the grate, was something I had hidden there yesterday morning, the small velvet box I'd found in Naomi's coat pocket. You may call it snooping, I call it self-defense. A father can only survive so many international engagements and broken hearts from one son. I wasn't planning to steal the thing. I only needed a moment to understand why she carried around a ring that wasn't from Jonathan, wasn't gold, and definitely wasn't new. The ring had been handmade, roughly soldered, as if by someone who had loved her more than they understood jewelry. A story clung to it like dust. I planned to put it back the moment I understood it. I had not expected the chimney to erupt. I peeked behind the logs. The box was gone. Jonathan exhaled dramatically. Do you think it was raccoons? Yes, I said, standing. Let's go with raccoons. He stared at me as if trying to decode a man who'd been replaced by a more chaotic twin. Why are you awake anyway? I wasn't about to tell him I couldn't sleep because a woman I absolutely should not have kissed, and absolutely should not want, was pacing around inside my skull like she owned the place. Old men wake up to pee, I said. It's our cardio. He sighed and wandered off toward the kitchen. Crisis for him was over. Crisis for me had just begun. Because if the ring wasn't behind the fireplace anymore, then where the hell was it? I didn't get the luxury of finding out right away. Naomi appeared from the hallway, wrapped in a long cream sweater, her hair slightly messy, her expression alert but soft. She had the look of someone who'd been woken by a noise but was still holding onto the edges of a dream. Everything okay? She asked. Dangerous question. Dangerous tone. Even the sweater felt like a weapon. Jonathan thought the chimney was possessed, I said. I assured him it's only mildly haunted. Her lips curled. It felt both criminal and inevitable. She stepped closer, slow, hesitant, as if the floor itself might give away our secret. My robe was open at the collar, and her eyes flicked down for half a second before she looked up again, pretending she hadn't. You really should get some sleep, she whispered. You really shouldn't whisper at me in dark hallways. She breathed out, nervous and amused in equal measure. I didn't mean to. Wait, what happened there? Her finger brushed the soot on my sleeve. Her touch was warm, almost electric. I didn't pull away fast enough. A minor fireplace situation, I said. Your fiancé believes the house is trying to communicate with him. She smiled a little, but I saw tension behind it. She wasn't tired. She was troubled. And I knew why. Jonathan asked you to elope? I said before I could stop myself. Her eyes widened. He told you. He tells me everything, I lied. He told me nothing unless it came with a tax question or a request for money. Naomi tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. I didn't say no. I just said we should slow down. Slow down. A romantic euphemism that usually means, I don't know what I'm doing but I hope no one dies emotionally. And how did he take that? I asked. He panicked, she murmured. He thinks I'm having second thoughts. Her second thoughts were standing 3 feet away in a robe. My heart thumped in a painful, foolish rhythm. You're marrying him soon, I said. You'll figure it out. I guess, she said. Then she looked up at me, and something tightened in her voice. You're not helping. I'm not qualified to help. She stepped closer again, not enough to touch, but enough for warmth to bridge the space. You know, she whispered, I can't stop thinking about the elevator. My breath stopped. It was the first time either of us had said it out loud. Neither can I admitted. It was stupid. Her voice trembled. It was a moment. It was more than a moment. We don't even know each other. I know you kissed me without hesitation. You kissed me back. And there, in the dim light of the hallway, the air went still. Not quiet, still. Like a scene hanging on the edge of a decision. But then Jonathan returned with a bowl of cereal, crunchy and oblivious. Dad, you sure about the raccoons? We both jumped apart like teenagers. Naomi spun around. I'm going to bed. She vanished into the guest corridor, almost running. Jonathan shrugged at her retreating shape, then at me. Women, he said, chewing loudly, they're impossible to understand. You have no idea, I muttered. He wandered off again, cereal in hand, and I retreated to my room feeling like the universe was leaning in very close to whisper, you really didn't think this through, did you? Christmas Eve morning arrived with too much brightness and far too many relatives. My sister Clara came first, dragging a new boyfriend who looked like he'd been sculpted by a committee that hated joy. My ex-wife arrived an hour later with her holiday charity baskets and the moral superiority of a saint who had never once lied to a customs officer. My grandchildren ran around screaming, weaponizing ornaments. Naomi moved among them with grace. She laughed at the children's antics, helped Clara carry gifts, charmed my ex-wife so thoroughly I began to suspect witchcraft. But every time she looked at me, brief, stolen looks across rooms crowded with people, my pulse kicked like an amateur boxer who refuses to quit. The ring haunted me. I needed to find it before she realized it was missing. Maybe she hadn't checked her pocket yet. Maybe the fireplace had simply spit it deeper into the chimney. Maybe raccoons had truly formed a jewelry-stealing syndicate. I spent most of the morning trying to discreetly inspect the fireplace while pretending to rearrange garlands. The staff assumed I was experiencing a late-onset interest in interior design. I let them believe it. At noon, the doorbell rang again. I wasn't expecting anyone else. The butler opened the door, and the hinges groaned like they sensed trouble. A tall man stepped inside, snow melting in his hair, expression strained with purpose. He carried a worn leather bag slung across his shoulder, something that looked far too sentimental for a stranger. He wasn't a stranger to Naomi. Her face drained of color the second she saw him. Naomi, he breathed. We need to talk. The room stilled. Even the grandchildren somehow paused mid-chaos. Jonathan blinked, confused. The man's eyes flicked to me, then back to her, and there was something raw in his expression. Recognition, regret, maybe even heartbreak. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out the velvet box. My heartbeat didn't just skip, it attempted a triple backflip. Naomi, he said softly. You left this at my place. I didn't know how else to reach you. You weren't answering. Jonathan looked from the man to the box and then to Naomi. What is that? The entire family leaned in like spectators at a very polite, wealthy gladiator match. Naomi swallowed hard. Her hand trembled. And for one flickering instant, her eyes darted to me. Only me. Whatever history that ring carried, it wasn't small. And it wasn't over. I realized 2 things at once. First, the universe had finally decided to stop hinting and start throwing things. Second, hiding the truth wasn't going to last much longer. The stranger stepped toward Naomi, voice low, shaking. I didn't come to cause trouble. I just couldn't let you pretend you don't know what that ring means. Jonathan stiffened. Excuse me, what ring? Naomi opened her mouth, but nothing came out. The man looked right at Jonathan. The one I gave her. A gasp rolled across the room like someone had opened a window in a storm. Jonathan's face paled. My stomach twisted. Naomi clutched the railing as if the floor had moved. The stranger finally looked back at her with a heartbreak that was unmistakably real. "Don't tell them," he whispered. "Tell them who I am." And the chapter ends here. If you want the next one, I'll continue the moment right from this cliff. I woke up on Christmas morning with the sort of headache that usually follows either a bottle of brandy or a terrible decision. Unfortunately, I hadn't had brandy the night before. So the culprit was obvious. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling of my old bedroom in the Harrison estate, remembering every thrilling, stupid detail of the previous night. The kiss in the elevator, the warmth of her breath, the way she'd melted into me, and then the hammer blow that came later, when Eric walked in with her on his arm and called her his fiancée. The universe has an impeccable sense of humor. Especially around the holidays. I dragged myself out of bed, put on the sort of sweater people only wear because it's Christmas and society demands it, and went downstairs. The house already smelled like cinnamon, fresh coffee, and the unspoken tension of a family gathering where everyone suspects everyone else of hiding something. When I entered the living room, I saw them all, Eric by the fireplace, looking like a magazine ad for affordable luxury, my daughter Lauren, who had flown in from Chicago and immediately begun policing everyone's sugar intake, Aunt Maggie, loudly judging the garland placement, and, of course, her. She stood near the window, holding a cup of tea, sunlight tracing the line of her cheek. She looked calm. Too calm. Suspiciously calm. A woman sitting on top of a bomb she hoped wouldn't explode. Her gaze met mine. 1 second. A flicker of recognition. A silent begging, "Don't you dare say a word." My heart thumped like I'd swallowed a marching band. "Morning, Dad." Eric came over and gave me a quick hug. "Grace and I are thinking we'll announce the official date later today. Just wanted you to be prepared." Prepared? The only thing I was prepared to do was dig a tunnel under the property and escape into the mountains. But I smiled. The sort of smile that says, "Sure, son, I'm delighted to be complicit in my own emotional collapse." "That's wonderful," I said. "Truly." Grace set down her cup and approached. Her steps were soft, careful, like someone approaching a tiger who might be tame but is statistically unlikely. "Good morning," she said. Smooth. Controlled. Nothing in her tone suggested that 12 hours ago we were pressed against an elevator wall like two teenagers in a coming-of-age drama. This woman could win Oscars for pretending nothing had happened. "Morning," I said, matching her tone. "Sleep well." Eric slung an arm around her waist, oblivious. Grace always sleeps well. Something about her meditation routine. I keep telling Dad he should try it, but he says he meditates by yelling at the news. Everyone chuckled. Grace did too, though her laugh cracked at the edges, and her eyes refused to meet mine. I escaped to the kitchen before I did something stupid, like confessing my feelings or throwing myself into the nearest snowbank. The chef, Paul, was chopping herbs with the sort of aggression usually reserved for military training. "Merry Christmas, Mr. Harrison. It's 18 degrees and I'm surrounded by family. What's merry about it?" Paul shrugged. "Could be worse. House could burn down." "True." He poured me coffee that tasted like second chances, and I sipped it slowly, wondering how the hell I was going to survive the day. By noon, the house was buzzing with relatives. There were cousins, in-laws, a stray dog someone insisted was part of the family tradition, and enough noise to drown out guilt, heartbreak, and the urge to flee. Eric moved through the crowd, proudly introducing Grace to every branch of the Harrison tree. She kept her smile elegant, warm, almost perfect. Almost. Because every time someone looked away, her eyes flicked toward me, checking if I was watching, checking if I was all right, checking if I was still capable of keeping this secret. I kept my distance. It was safer that way. For everyone. But fate, being a shameless prankster, pushed us together by mid-afternoon. Literally, Aunt Maggie shoved us both into the hallway, saying, "You two need to talk about the menu. Preferably somewhere I don't have to listen to you." The hallway door clicked shut behind us. Grace exhaled sharply. "This is a disaster." "Oh, absolutely. A 5-star catastrophe. Please don't joke. If I stop joking, I'll start screaming." She rubbed her temples. "I didn't know. But Eric, I swear. I met him months ago, casually through work, and we didn't reconnect until recently. I never saw his picture in your house, and I didn't connect the dots because the Harrison men all age like different species?" That finally earned a smile. A sad, short one. Something like that. We stood there, neither moving, suspended between what had happened and what couldn't happen again. I won't say anything, I murmured. Not a word. I'm not here to ruin your life. She looked up. Her eyes were shimmering. Not with tears, Grace didn't strike me as someone who cried easily, but with some painful, quiet gratitude. Thank you, she whispered. A moment. A small one. But electric. Then Eric appeared at the end of the hall. There you two are. Mom's asking about the table settings. Are you coming? Grace stepped back instantly. Of course. They left together, their hands briefly intertwined, and I stood alone in the hallway like the punchline of a joke no one had finished telling. Dinner was a battlefield. Every year, the Harrisons reenacted the same ritual: too many people, too much wine, and too many unresolved feelings mashed together under the guise of holiday cheer. This year, however, the tension had seasoning. A dangerous, flammable sort of seasoning. I took my place at the long table with Eric on my left and Grace on my right. She froze when she saw the seating chart. I leaned in and whispered, I didn't plan this. I swear. She whispered back, of course you didn't. That would require the universe liking you. Dinner began innocently enough. Small talk, jokes, the usual chaos of people trying to pass dishes without elbowing each other. But at some point, someone asked the question that detonated the evening. So, Grace, Aunt Maggie said as she shoveled mashed potatoes onto her plate, how did you two meet? I love a good love story. I felt Grace tense beside me like someone preparing for a car crash. Eric laughed, casual, unaware of the emotional landmine under the table. It's not that dramatic. We ran into each other outside a gallery downtown, right? She dropped her phone. I picked it up. Very rom-com stuff. Everyone swooned at the cuteness. Everyone except the two people who knew the real rom-com moment had involved electricity, a stuck elevator, and a kiss that still threatened to set off fireworks in my bloodstream. Then Cousin Peter, who had exactly two social skills and both were useless, leaned forward. And how did you meet Mr. Harrison? Our patriarch here? He winked at me. Was it also romantic? Grace inhaled sharply. I nearly dropped my fork. She cleared her throat. Very uneventful, actually. We just met at the door yesterday. Perfectly normal. Normal? Peter asked. You sure? If looks could kill, Grace and I would have attended Peter's funeral by dessert. Someone changed the subject, blessed, merciful Lauren, but the damage had been done. The air felt hot, heavy, packed with secrets. I tried to participate in conversation, tried to follow the jokes, tried to look at Grace only when absolutely necessary. And then, during dessert, it happened. She brushed her hand against mine. A touch so small it could have been accidental. But it wasn't. I knew it. And she knew I knew it. A jolt ran up my arm. I didn't move. I didn't pull away. Her hand lingered for half a second too long. Just enough to say something neither of us could voice. She withdrew quickly, cheeks flushed. Eric didn't notice. He was busy telling Uncle Henry why cryptocurrency was the future of everything. I excused myself from the table before my heartbeat became audible to the entire room. Outside, snow was falling in lazy spirals, making the world look softer than it felt. I sat on the back porch steps, letting the cold settle my thoughts. It didn't help. The door creaked open behind me. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. I knew that walk by now. Grace sat down beside me, leaving just an inch of space between us. An inch that felt more dangerous than proximity. I shouldn't be here, she said quietly. Neither should I. We have to stop this. Yes, I murmured. We should. But neither of us moved. The snow fell harder. Somewhere inside, someone laughed. Christmas lights flickered through the porch window, casting soft colors over her face. She watched the falling snow. I keep thinking this will go away if I pretend hard enough. But it doesn't. Trust me, I said. I am the king of pretending. It's not working for me either. Her breath shook. This is going to hurt someone. It already hurts. We sat there, breathing the same cold air, wanting the same impossible thing. She finally stood. We need to be careful. We do. She hesitated. Thank you, for not ruining today. For trying. You don't have to thank me. Her eyes softened. I do. She left before I could say anything else. Before the porch light revealed too much. Before the moment became something we couldn't walk away from. I stayed there long after she was gone, long after the cold seeped through my sweater, long after the snow turned the world white. Christmas had only just begun. And everything was already falling apart. The storm didn't hit all at once. It crept in overnight, slow and quiet, like someone tiptoeing through the house trying not to wake the guests. By morning, the estate was buried in a soft, glittering blanket of snow, and every tree branch outside my window sagged under the weight of it. I woke up feeling like someone had smuggled a brick into my chest while I slept. Not pain exactly, just pressure. Heavy, unavoidable, lodged somewhere between guilt and longing. I rolled out of bed, opened the curtains, and discovered that the driveway was completely blocked. No one was going anywhere. The world had shut us all inside together, like a cosmic joke with excellent comedic timing. This was fine. Perfect, even. What could go wrong when you trap a man, his grown children, his extended family, and the woman he accidentally fell in love with, who, minor detail, happened to be engaged to his son, under one roof for the next 24 hours? I went downstairs. The house was oddly quiet, like everyone had woken up but decided to hide in separate corners to avoid emotional landmines. In the kitchen I found Grace. She stood by the stove in a cream-colored sweater, stirring something in a pot. She looked peaceful, like someone who'd gotten more sleep than I had. Or faked it convincingly. Our eyes met, and something inside me moved, like a small animal waking up. She gave me a soft smile. "Morning." Her voice was gentle but not fragile. The kind of voice that knew exactly what we were trying to avoid. "Morning," I said, trying not to sound like a teenager seeing his crush at school. I checked behind me for witnesses. None. Then stepped closer because gravity is rude like that. "What are you making?" I asked. "Hot chocolate. I thought it might help with the storm. Or at least distract the children." "Eric's 32. She smirked. "He counts." I watched her stir the pot. Too closely, Our shoulders brushed when she reached for a mug, and the warmth of her sweater against my arm felt like more contact than it was. I stepped back before I did something reckless like inhale deeply. "You okay?" she asked quietly. "I've had more peaceful holidays," I admitted. "Last Christmas I only had to deal with a dishwasher malfunction and a flaming cheesecake." Grace laughed. Really laughed. The sound warmed something frozen in me. "I needed that," she said. "I did too." And for a moment, just a moment, the kitchen felt like its own little universe, where complications didn't exist and I wasn't the worst father in North America. Of course, the universe is allergic to giving me peace. The door swung open. Eric stepped inside, brushing snow from his hair. "Dad." "Grace." "Good, oh, you're already here." His face lit up when he saw her. Then he crossed the room and kissed her cheek. A friendly, affectionate, entirely normal gesture. It hit me harder than it should have. "Morning, sweetheart," he said to her. "Thanks for making this. You're an angel." I stepped back, suddenly aware of my hands, my breath, the way my heart thudded like it was performing a tap dance routine. Grace didn't look at me. Not once. She just handed him a mug and smiled like she was supposed to. This was the right thing. The responsible thing. The adult thing. And it felt like swallowing nails. I mumbled something about checking the generator and escaped the kitchen before my expression betrayed me. Out in the garage, I pretended to inspect machinery I knew perfectly well was functioning. The generator hummed, the snowplow sat unused, and the tools hung in neat rows like they'd been arranged by a man with too much time and too much money. Which, to be fair, described me perfectly. I leaned against the workbench, rubbing my forehead. The metal was cold against my palms. I heard footsteps behind me. "Dad." I straightened immediately. "Everything all right?" "Yeah," he said. "Actually, no. Not really." This was not the topic I wanted from him. I prayed he wouldn't say something obvious like, "Have you noticed how incredible Grace is? Isn't she just perfect?" Because I didn't trust myself not to flinch. He looked troubled. Really troubled. "You ever feel," he began slowly, "like you're trying to make something work because it's supposed to work? And everyone thinks it's right, and on paper it's perfect, but your brain keeps going in circles and..." He trailed off, staring at the floor. "And you can't tell if you're in love with the person or just the idea of them?" I blinked. "That's a complicated question," I said carefully. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know. Grace is amazing. Smart. Beautiful. But sometimes when I'm with her, I feel like I'm performing a version of myself she expects. Not the real me." A small, guilty spark lit up in my chest. He wasn't talking about her. Not really. He was talking about himself. I kept my voice steady. "Relationships are messy. They're not scripts you follow. But I keep thinking, he said, I don't want to hurt her. Or disappoint everyone. Or make another mistake. Another? I asked. He hesitated. Then sighed. Dad, you know me. I rush things. I choose fast, apologize later. And I don't want this to be another one of those. This wasn't the conversation I expected, but it was the one that wrapped its hand around my ribcage and squeezed. Before I could respond, the garage door squeaked open again. She froze when she saw us, then gave a polite smile. Sorry. Didn't mean to interrupt. Your sister is organizing a board game coup in the living room and asked me to come find you. Eric nodded distractedly. We'll be right there. She turned to leave, but her eyes flicked to mine for the briefest second, just long enough for a spark of worry to flick across her face. Then she disappeared back inside. Eric blew out a long, conflicted breath. See? Even now I can't figure out why I feel so. He didn't finish. Instead he just shook his head, frustrated. You're allowed to be confused, I said gently. It doesn't make you a bad person. Eric nodded but didn't look convinced. Maybe. I don't know. He walked past me heading back to the house. Before leaving he paused. Dad. Yes. I'm glad you're here this Christmas. Really? I swallowed that unexpectedly sharp emotion and forced a smile. Me too, son. He closed the door behind him. I stood alone again, the cold settling over me. Back inside, the living room had transformed into a full-scale family arena. Lauren was aggressively arranging board games while Aunt Maggie kept declaring that Monopoly should be outlawed due to irreversible damage to sibling relationships. Grace sat on the couch, quietly sipping tea. She looked composed, but her knee bounced lightly, an anxious rhythm meant only for someone paying very close attention. Someone like me. I sat down on the opposite end of the couch. A safe distance. A responsible distance. You okay? I murmured. Her knee slowed. No. Not really. Eric seems, I trailed off. Conflicted. I know, she whispered. I feel like I'm tiptoeing through his emotions with a blindfold on. Do you love him? The question escaped before I could stop it. Soft, careful but still dangerous. She froze. Completely. After a long moment, she spoke. I care about him. I really do. But love, her voice cracked. I thought I knew what it was supposed to feel like. I'm not sure anymore. The room around us buzzed with laughter and shouts. But between us, silence hummed with tension. She turned her head slightly. This isn't fair. To him. To you. To me. I know. We should talk, she said. Soon. My pulse hit the ceiling. I'd like that. Before anything more could be said, Lauren shouted, Dad. Grace. You're on my team. Grace exhaled, straightened, and put her mask of calm back on. Duty calls, she whispered. And I wondered how long the two of us could keep this fragile, impossible secret from shattering everything in its path. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one inside the house. The house was quieter the next morning, the kind of quiet that comes after a storm, when things look peaceful, but you know the ground is still unstable. Snow kept drifting lazily past the windows, thick enough to blur the world into soft white shapes. Inside, the lights were still glowing from last night's chaos of board games, half-finished wine glasses, and the debris of bonding attempts that only a large family can produce. I made my way downstairs slowly, feeling the weight of something approaching. Not doom. More like inevitability wearing a tasteful sweater. When I reached the living room, I found Grace sitting on the couch alone, her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee she clearly wasn't drinking. She didn't look up at first, but the way her shoulders lifted when she sensed me stepping in told me she'd been waiting. She patted the couch cushion beside her. A small gesture. Innocent enough. Dangerous enough. I sat. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, just heavy, like it carried its own gravitational field. I didn't sleep, she finally said. Me neither. She gave a humorless little laugh. I guess it's comforting that we're equally miserable. The universe has a sense of symmetry, I said. It likes balance. Cruel, inconvenient balance. Grace turned toward me, her knees drawn slightly inward, her hair falling forward. We can't keep going like this. It's not sustainable. It's not fair. And it's terrifying. My throat tightened. I know. And I don't want to lie to him, she continued. I don't want to look at him and pretend this is something it's not. I don't want to walk into a marriage with a heart that's wandering somewhere it shouldn't. Grace. She shook her head, a a soft warning that she wasn't done. I thought I was doing everything right. Choosing stability. Choosing a kind man. Choosing a life that made sense. And then, the elevator, I whispered. Her lips parted. The elevator. Silence again. A softer one this time. I don't know how it happened, she said. You were just someone I felt drawn to. Instantly. And I haven't felt that way in a long time. My pulse thudded. Neither have I. She exhaled shakily. I kept telling myself it was nothing. A moment. A spark that would fade. But then I came here and I saw you, and it wasn't fading. It was worse. I stared at her, at the worry in her eyes, the hope buried under it, the fear built right beside it. Grace, I said carefully, whatever we feel, we have to protect him from it. He deserves that. I know. And we can't act on anything. I know. And even talking about it feels like cheating. I know, she whispered again, this time with her voice breaking. She brushed a tear away quickly, like she didn't want me to see it. I reached out, instinct, reflex, and my fingers touched hers before I could stop myself. She didn't pull away. Not immediately. But after a breath, a painful one, she did. We should go for a walk, she said suddenly. Outside. Where no one can overhear us. I frowned. In the snow. Yes. Grace, there's 30 inches out there. She stood up and grabbed her coat. Then we'll suffer together. It was, without exaggeration, the coldest walk of my life. The kind of cold that immediately makes you reconsider all your life choices. But next to me, trudging through snow like a determined Arctic explorer, Grace looked strangely free. We stopped by the old wooden fence that bordered the property, the same fence Eric and Lauren used to climb over as kids whenever they wanted to escape chores. Grace turned to me, cheeks flushed, breath turning to frost. I'm going to talk to him, she said. Today. My heart jerked. Grace. Not to confess about us, she added firmly. That wouldn't help anyone. It would only blow up his Christmas, and I won't be the person who ruins a family. But I can't marry someone when I'm this unsure. He deserves better than a fiancé who's questioning everything. I nodded slowly. I agree. Her eyes softened. And after that, I'm leaving. A small, sharp ache formed right under my ribs. Leaving the estate? Leaving town, she said quietly. At least for a while. I need space to think. And you need space to heal from this mess. I forced a small smile. You're assuming I'm capable of healing. You are, she said, stepping closer. If anyone can rebuild themselves after a disaster, it's you. You've known me for what, 48 hours? Sometimes that's enough. She looked at me for a long moment. We can't be what we want right now. Maybe ever. But I don't regret that moment in the elevator. A breath left me. Neither do I. She hesitated. Then, softly, if things were different. I didn't let her finish. I know. Because I did know. If things were different, we'd both be different people. Back inside, the house was alive again. Laughter, clattering dishes, someone arguing about ski boots even though no one was skiing today. Eric found us by the staircase, snow in our hair, faces red from the cold. He smiled at her. You okay? Grace nodded. Can we talk? Privately? Eric blinked. Sure. Yeah. Of course. They left together, heading toward my study, a room that had witnessed far too many Harrison confessions over the years. I didn't follow. I didn't hover. I didn't listen. I went to the kitchen and busied myself with anything that kept my hands occupied and my mind distracted. Minutes passed. Then more. Finally, the door opened. Eric came out first. He wasn't angry. Or devastated. He looked relieved. Sad but relieved. Like someone who'd been handed a truth he was half afraid to ask for. He saw me by the counter. Dad? He said quietly. We called it off. A strange combination of feelings surged through me. Shock, sadness, guilt, something that felt like hope but had no business being there. I'm sorry, I said carefully. Don't be, he replied. It wasn't right. We both knew it. I think we were trying to force something because we thought we should. Not because we felt it. He let out a long breath. He's incredible. Anyone would be lucky to have her. It just wasn't us. He didn't know how close he was to the truth. And I didn't enlighten him. Grace stepped out of the study a moment later. Her eyes were red, but she was steady. I'll be packing my things, she said softly. I'll get a taxi from the edge of the property. I know the roads will be slow, but... Nonsense, Eric said. I'll drive you. I owe you that much. She touched his arm lightly. Thank you. Then she looked at me. 1 second. A whole lifetime. A silent goodbye whispered through that glance. Then she turned away. They left within the hour. I stood on the porch with the rest of the family, watching the car crawl slowly down the long snowy driveway until it vanished behind the trees. When the door finally closed behind us, Aunt Maggie sighed dramatically. Oh, that was the most eventful Christmas since your brother tried to propose during a sugar-induced hallucination. Lauren jabbed me in the ribs. You okay, old man? You look weirdly emotional. I'm fine, I said, lying with the confidence of a politician. Good, she said, already walking away. Because you're helping with cleanup. The rest of the day moved like molasses, family, noise, responsibilities, all of it cushioning the echo of the woman who'd walked out of my life before she even fully entered it. But that night, when the estate finally went quiet, I went outside again. The snow had stopped. The sky was clear. A calm after the chaos. I stood there a long time. Breathing. Remembering. Accepting. I thought of the elevator. The spark. The impossible timing. And the woman who kissed me like she was trying to wake up a part of me I thought had died years ago. Maybe fate has a strange sense of humor. Maybe it brings people together not to keep them, but to remind them they're still alive. I didn't know if I'd ever see her again. But as I walked back inside, closing the door against the cold, one truth settled quietly into place. This Christmas hadn't ruined my life. It had restarted it. And sometimes that's enough.